Hello, my wonderful boys and girls. Today we're going to be taking a look at Sprawl, and no, we're not talking about what your stepsister does when she gets caught under the couch.
And also not what you do every time you see a BBC.
Exactly, Cortana. We're talking about a video game here, not British television.
Neither was I was talking about big, juicy,
competent game design. Which is insane considering this game was spearheaded by two developers under the name of Mayeth and published by Rogue Games. And I have to say, right off the bat, the moment you step into this game, the aesthetic just grabs you by the cojones.
Oh, there King Jiffy Goats goes, fantasizing over the old male hacky sack again.
Oh, shut up. You're just mad that they killed you off before you could slob Master Chief's knob.
You know what? If I could, I would have, but you know they had to make me a stupid hologram.
You heard it here first, folks. Cortana is a simp. A sad, sad simp.
That's better than what you are. You sit in the corner while your wife gets plowed.
Well, it looks like your appearance isn't the only thing getting projected.
You're so ugly that when Alec Baldwin shot that girl, he was thinking about you.
That insult didn't even make any sense.
Shut up, you stupid content gerbil, you fat idiot. Get back to work. Actually do something of use for once.
You know, Cortana, credit where credit is due. When I gotta get to work, I gotta get to work. You are right in that regard. And let's get back to what this game does and does right and the things it does wrong. And let's get all into the nitty gritty, because this was a really fun one for me. I'm not gonna lie. When I jumped into the city, I saw that it kind of reminded me of District 9. I'm not the biggest fan of the movie, but I see its appeal. There was a lot of things it did well. And I have to say that when you jump into the city, it is a little refreshing to not jump into these nostalgia, bright colored dystopia that we've gotten so many times. If you look back at a game like Turbo Overkill, that is a lot in the lines of RoboCop, Judge Dredd, but then you take a little beat and go over here, we're in some District 9, Blade Runner, that weird one with Matt Damon where he's got the exosuit. It reminds me a lot more of this more grounded, gritty style. Now, for me personally, I prefer the 80s nostalgia. I'm not gonna lie. I like the bright colors. I like the over-the-top nature of something like a RoboCop and a Judge Dredd. So when it came to aesthetic, I do think Turbo Overkill is a bit better, but I like that these guys looked at that and said, you know, there's not enough push in a sci-fi dystopia like these other great IPs in worlds like this, and I want to see more of this. And I think they did a really good job with pushing in that direction and keeping a constant theme throughout this game. I have to say, though, that the cityscape, I wish there was more of it. You do get a couple levels in the city, and it's wonderful, it's amazing, it's bright, it's brown, you know, but like the good kind of brown.
Hold up, pause, that sounded mad racist.
I mean, you're kinda right, that did kinda sound wildly out of pocket. What I mean is it didn't just kinda put like a brown filter over everything and make it look all dingy and blown out like a lot of things try to do. They're like, oh, we want our game to be gritty, so they put a piss filter over everything like they did in the 2000s. That's kind of what I'm talking about here, is where it doesn't feel like they just put that weird filter from the 2000s on everything so it looked piss-stained brown. And you can also tell where it wears its influence on its shoulder. You look at the pistols, they look very akin to almost even Cyberpunk, all the way over to your Blade Runner influences. And I really like how the guns feel in this game. They feel incredible. Almost every single weapon in its secondary feels absolutely useful. There's not a single weapon in this game that didn't feel incredible. Not to mention, it starts you off with two badass akimbo pistols that just feel so goddamn good, and the shotgun is just so cool looking and also very, very useful. The mechanics in terms of the slow motion are intuitively designed. It feels like every single second you need to utilize one of these bad mamma jammas, you're just slapping the clit right in place and getting shit done. Boss fights, however, were one of my least favorite parts of this game. Now, I've never been a fan of hit the glowing spot boss fight. I've always thought they were annoying. I'd rather just fight the boss fight and then have to avoid really cool mechanics coming back at me. I think that's a much better way to design a boss fight. I get the understanding, well, we don't want it to be easy, we don't want it to be spongy, we want to make it right there in the middle, so they put hot spots on the bastard and say, hey, pump these hot spots full of hot, juicy lead. Here's where the problems arise, right? Once you create the hotspot type technique, I feel like it slows the boss fight down and almost creates this false sponginess where you're constantly running around waiting for that one opportunity to hit it instead of just actually fighting the boss and actually engaging with the game's mechanics. If you have your boss fight just firing a bunch of cool choreographed attacks, you can then avoid those attacks and you feel like you're actually having a fun boss fight. Take a Souls game, for example. I know that they're not always the best example because their combat's a little wonky hokey, but the idea behind it where the boss fight, everything you learn about it, you can then take in the next run behind that boss fight. You're then learning each individual frame, each individual design, and there's aspects of that in these boss fights, but it just seems like it focuses way more on hitting these spots than it does the cool mechanics of the boss itself. That's not saying what it does here isn't done well. I think it's done well enough, but I remember when I first got into this boss fight you're watching on screen, I went in thinking it was a normal enemy like I'd fought throughout the entire game up until this point, and I was constantly just spamming it with weapons, and I was running around shooting it, and about halfway through, me being dumb and using all my ammo and all my slow motion, I realized that it had hot spots, and I was like, ah, shit, punch me in the taint, daddy, because I have made a mistake. And the problem then was I hadn't enough ammo to finish the actual boss fight, so I was just avoiding everything, and I learned its choreographed moves to the point that it couldn't touch my little bussy, so there was nothing it could do to me, but there was also nothing I could do to it, because there was no ammo being dropped, there was no ammo in any of my weapons. It just seemed like I was in this constant, endless brigade, and I couldn't wait till I got it done. And that's one issue that will arise with these hotspot type boss fights, because even if you have enough resources going in, you can mess up on one little thought on the first boss fight, and then you're just waiting for it to kill you so you can get respawned and start over. Now that that's out of the way, one of my big gripes with the game, and again, I don't think it's that big of a gripe, I think that the bosses are good enough. It's just something for me personally, so don't come out of the woodworks and try to steal my micro dick because you're a little mad that I made an observation that's my personal opinion. Oh no, he played the game wrong, he's a big idiot. Tell me in the comments below, I do not care. One thing I want to give this game props for, and I think that it is needed to be said, is this is probably one of the best wall running games I have ever played. Now I know you Titanfall 2 fans are out there, I haven't played Titanfall 2. Blasphemy, blasphemy, I can't believe he never played no Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 is one of the best FPS games in the world. You call yourself an FPS reviewer, you stupid little cuck? First off, rude. I think that was definitely uncalled for. Second off, I'll get around to it. It's in my backlog, and I have to say that I was more excited to play this game over Titanfall 2. Not that I don't like Titanfall, I just remember playing the first one, not enjoying it, and then everybody told me the second one fixes everything and it's amazing and it's got a glorious campaign, and I just kind of put it in the back burner. But as of the games I played thus far, this game has the best wall running I have played thus yet. I've played a lot of games with wall running, and this one's just so fucking fluid. It is so much fun to wall run in this, and it never feels like it takes away from the experience. I'm not hitting a key to wall run. I'm not doing anything. I'm just running up to wall, running on wall like a bad mama jamma. Seven, the character who you play in this game, she knows how to fucking put her foot on a wall like nobody else, baby. The way she can finesse a wall makes me think how good she is at finessing a dick. Well, I'm on this little point that I'm making here, not the sexist joke that somebody will get mad about, but while I'm actually talking about the mechanics of this game, I like that they didn't throw too much at the player. I think there's a big problem in the indie game scene where they see some cool mechanics in other games and they're like, we're gonna add that in our game. So they have slow motion, they have wall running, they have double jump, they gotta fly, they gotta have this weird pinpointing, jumping, Doom Eternal-like combat, and it's trying to shove everything into the square box when they're working with a circle. And I like that this game was like, no, we're a square. Well, you don't fuck with what we are that perfect square, we're fitting into the hole the best we know how to, and I like that they stood on their business and just fucking ran with it. You will notice throughout this entire campaign that they do what they do is done right and done to almost perfection. They don't fuck around, they don't find out, and that's what you need to be when you are an indie game developer. I get it, when you're out there, you're playing a game, you see something cool, you want to add it to yours, but a lot of times, I'm thinking about games like Covenant, where you get through the game and you're thinking about all the mechanics you forgot to use because the game just wanted you to use too much. And I get it, you want that freedom of expression and that freedom of how the player utilizes the game, but I think that by limiting their gameplay mechanics to stuff that they could perfect, you get more freedom and more utilization out of the stuff, so you're actually thinking about using it in different and cool ways, expanding your freedom in the gameplay environment instead of going through the game and thinking, wow, I wish I would have utilized the slow motion more, or wow, I didn't utilize the come button enough, or I didn't fucking shit on people's foreheads enough. You don't really have to fuss with any of that because the game's so streamlined. Another thing that gets absolutely huge beneficial points from old King Jiffy is the fact that they tried to put a story in this game. It's not the greatest story. It's very simplistic. Seven gets killed by her agency that she worked for because she sucks all the sorts of donkey dick, and they're like, we don't like you anymore, and they're a corrupt evil corporation type bullshit, and she's got to take them down, escorted by this weird voice in her head. And it seems like there's deeper stuff going on, and if you want to get really autistic about it, you could probably figure all the shit out, really go super badass mode and find all the nitty gritty. But I thought what we had here was an interesting enough concept. I think they could have probably done a little more with it, but it was good enough. And I do appreciate when they tried to put any story behind a game. It gives me a reason to keep fighting forward. At least I had the motivation to keep pushing on, that somebody was fucking with me, now I'm gonna go fuck them.
And God, am I gonna fuck them good?
Daddy don't play. You know what else this game doesn't play around with? It doesn't play around with the fact that it gives you complete freedom to play the game how you want. It's got so many difficulty sliders, so many sliders in general. You go into the menu of this bitch, and there is just sliders everywhere, and there's so many different options. It can be a little confusing on what they mean and stuff. I think that they could have been labeled a little bit better, but in terms of absolute freedom and playing the game the way you want and letting the player do whatever the fuck they want, this game does a good job of it, and I really want to commend them on that. Some people call like difficulty sliders woke. You can just shut the fuck up. You don't know what woke is, and I'm so sick of hearing the word woke. It's like it used to have a point, and now we're just slapping it on anything to create an argument out of nothing. I mean, last time I checked, when you have a difficulty slider in a game, it's not trying to push your political preference, so maybe learn what the fuck you're talking about before you just start spitting nonsense. It's also nice to see that this game didn't try to do the really blocky type design on its weapons and enemies. It does have a little bit of a block to it, but it's not that like overly top old school boomer shooter pixelization. It feels very much like a game that would have came out on the original Xbox or early 360. And just thinking about it makes my dick twitch just a little bit, because it brings me back to that old id Tech 4 design, but really giving you more freedom than the id Tech 4 did. You're not just walking down hallways shooting in a straight line like almost every single game from id Tech 4 had you doing, whether it was Doom 3, Quake 4, Area 51, or Prey. It really, all those games limited your freedom as a player, as much as I love those games. So to see that aesthetic put into this game, but with a much more open map design and freedom of movement around the arenas, it just feels more like a modern shooter, but with the stylistic choices of the old id Tech games, which, that's perfect, dude. Sign me up. My nipples are hard enough to cut your grandma's diamonds. And take a little trip back in time with me. You look at Phantom Fury. I know it came out recently, but it still feels like so long ago. When that game was announced, I was so excited to see this jump into the next era. We were finally going to get the era that I was most nostalgic by, to get a game, hopefully as good as the 2D game that they made. I was excited to see what that jump was going to be like, only to have it shit straight into my mouth, and then I had to throw it back up, and then to get to the ending of the game, which is the only fun part. And I feel like this game is everything that Phantom Fury's ending was, but 10 times better. It never walked away from what it did well, and it's just so refreshing to see that other people care about that era of gaming that I'm so nostalgic for. Your Halo 2s, your Doom 3s, and so forth. It really feels like they cared about this era, but they also knew that this era wasn't as cool as the modern era in terms of gameplay mechanics. They were great for their time, but now we know how to do things a slight bit better, and they shoved every ounce of cum they could into this beauty and just have you feel like you're controlling the amount of semen that gets pumped into the universe at every second. I mean, I'm so close to impregnating this game, you have no idea. Now, again, I think this last section of the game was really gorgeous. I liked the red everywhere. I liked that everything was a very fluid design in terms of platforming, because this is one of the most fun platforming I have done in an FPS game. Yes, I've already talked about the wall running, but when you have wall running, you're going to have platforming, and the platforming could be shit, even though the wall running's good. That is a possibility, but everything was mostly intuitively designed. Now, there were times where I felt like the wall running got in a little bit of the way of the platforming, and it just kind of got a little janky, but it was few and far between, and that could have been user error, because let's be real, I'm half retarded, so I'm gonna fuck up from time to time. Yet that didn't stop me. That never stopped me from having actual fun. When I hit that little bit of difficulty and I would have to overcome it, I felt like I'd grown better and stronger as a player. It's honestly because of this game's giggity schmoodle-ass design. It is easy to pick up and play, but incredibly hard to master, and that's what's beautiful about it, and that's what's beautiful about making sure that your mechanics in the game are perfectly fledged out. You don't need every mechanic under the sun. I've already mentioned this in this video, but I think it needs a reiteration. I think I need to send the cum falcon on your guys' asses, because there's something truly beautiful about what these guys did here and how they looked at a game and they said, we are going to focus on wall running, we are going to focus on slow motion, we're going to focus on great aesthetic, great atmosphere, we're going to put a little bit of story in, all the guns are going to feel like you're tongue punching a fart box with all the power that Goku can muster. That's right, you plebes, I made a Dragon Ball Z reference in the middle of this video. You're welcome. Suck upon my wiener, you little stupid faces. But not only are the weapons stupidly amazing to use, they just kind of make you giggle like an idiot, but when you kill something, you get the perfect amount of jibs, and when you kill a robot character, they explode with the type of gratuity you'd see in a Michael Bay film. It only reaffirms the punchy feeling that you already get from the weapons. Now you got punchy feeling happening to the enemies where they turn into mists of blood and explosions. Great, that's exactly what we want. So even when I have my little gripes when it comes to the story not being as grand as I want it to be, I still appreciate that it's there. And when I do have gripes about the boss fights, I mean, we get so much else great in this game that even though personally in a preference sort of way I don't enjoy the glowy fucking shoot the orb design, I still love every single arena throughout this experience. I love every single area because it always pushes me to have fun and explore every single inch because of the mechanics it gives me and the way that I have to learn to master them. Also, this is something else that needs to be said to all those indie developers out there. If you're not going to put in ADS mechanics, which I don't think you have to put in ADS mechanics, I don't want to even get into the retardation that is the argument against ADS mechanics. I want you to know, if you're going to have pistols and SMGs, make those motherfuckers akimbo. You have to make them akimbo. That is the coolest way to have them, and this game understands that. I love akimbo. I think akimbo's cool, and if you're like, well, you don't need akimbo, it's waste more ammo. Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Akimbo is cool. I don't think you've ever seen the movie with Bruce Willis where he's like in the desert and he's a mafia guy and he kills everybody at the table with the 45s. If you haven't seen that, it's called Last Man Standing. It is a great film, and it made me love akimbo ever since. And after I watched that movie, I remember saying to like my grandpa's friend that you could never shoot 45s akimbo, because I was like fucking 12, and he looks at me, he's like, oh yes you can, and we went to the gun range and I got to shoot akimbo pistols. It is one of the greatest memories I hold in my entire life, and I have to say that since that moment, anytime a game gave me akimbo, I get a little bit of hard. I get almost, not a little bit, I'm lying to you, I'm actually pulling the curtain over your face and I'm spitting in your fucking mouth because I'm lying to you. I get so hard that I'm already pre-coming every time I see akimbo guns in a game. It is one of my favorite things in all of gaming, and I love the fact that this game didn't shy away from it, and it gave me two different variants of akimbo guns. I mean, come on, are we not having a fucking blast here? This game needs more love. I've seen some people talk about it, I've seen some things here, I've had people call it very simplistic, and to those people who called it simplistic, I want you to know, it is perfectly simplistic. It does what it needs to do perfectly. I don't think that every game needs to have every mechanic. I don't think that every game needs to be incredibly over the top and doing everything brand new. Sometimes you just need a good game made by solid people. Now, I don't know these people personally. I didn't reach out to the developers on this game, but I have to let you know that they did something so profoundly genius with their simplistic design. It was like they had a goal, they had a dream, they did the dream, and they didn't break into any new realms, and they didn't do anything different, but they made slight improvements on a formula that has been done time and time again, and those slight improvements make my nipples fucking hard. They make my chest hair curl into little knots, and then I have to comb them out with a chest hair brush. Do chest hair brushes exist? I don't know, I just use a regular brush. That's all I really have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know I didn't get into the last boss fight. I had footage of it, and I thought I would just let you experience it. I didn't like it. I really, if I had to talk about the one worst part of this game, and I know you've already heard me complain about the boss fights enough in this video because it's not my style. You fight a giant helicopter, and that's just such a downgrade from fighting mechs and cool shit early. It's like, oh, now we're fighting a giant helicopter? That's it? That is the biggest smear on this entire game. It is the worst thing they did in the entire thing, is you get to the end of the game and you fight a fucking helicopter. They do a good job in prepping you for that fight. You have the see the helicopter earlier on in the game. You fight it a couple times previously. I think that I've always liked when games do that, that, where they're like, hey, see this thing, this is going to be important later, and they use the storytelling in the gameplay experience instead of hitting you with a cutscene. I like the way they did that. I just wish it was something cooler than a big-ass helicopter, especially considering how cool everything else is designed in this whole experience. But that's all I got for you guys. Catch you later.